Well, I am so excited to finally be here. Sorry for some of the technical issues. So the agenda today, as Mary alluded to, is sales alignment with customer marketing. I'll give you just a little bit of background on me, why sales alignment is important, like why are we here today and talking about this? And then I'll give you some tactical input and opinions on how to educate sales and some of the pitfalls to avoid that I fell into. And then I'll end it with some sales enablement tips. And I really, really encourage anyone, if you guys have questions, Mary, I think you might be monitoring the chat. I am not. If you want to chime in and ask questions, please, like you guys are all the experts as well on a lot of this stuff. So please chime in. This can be interactive. I'm going to try to talk a little slower because I can talk very fast. So it'll slow me down as well. So please chime in with any questions or comments that you have. So just to give you a little background on me, I started my tech career with Marketo, and I actually came on and did community there for like 4 of my 5.5 years there. So I got a lot of experience, not only on the community side and driving engagement and building programs, but on the advocacy side as well. And because I ended my career there as the customer marketing manager, which I still was a big part of the community, but was really like developing more programs and running things in that way. From there, I took some time off to have kids and start a family. And then I landed at Coupa with, ironically, several of my Marketo colleagues who had moved over there and spent 3.5 years there building out a lot more programs. And that included running with my counterpart a really successful reference program. And then I got the wonderful opportunity to join Airtable. This was a really awesome opportunity because it allowed me to come into a company that did not have customer marketing, and I got to build the program from the ground up. I had always wanted to do this, and it was just something that I didn't have to think twice about. And so my time at Airtable, unfortunately, was cut short in September by the RIF. So as devastating as that was, just because of my wonderful team and all the great work that we were doing, and we were really, really seeing a lot of progress across the sales enablement piece that I'm going to speak to you about. So I was very heartbroken, but also I do not regret it for a moment, just because it was such a wonderful experience in my career and the relationships that I was able to build. So this presentation is going to focus mostly on kind of—
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, is it recording now?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No worries. They don't need the background on my career. Let me click this off real quick. Okay. But this presentation is going to focus mostly on the Airtable, kind of the last 2 years of my career in terms of that sales alignment and what I was trying to accomplish and kind of where I left off. All right, so in preparing for this presentation, I started thinking about my career, obviously, and the difference between really sales and marketing. There are some big differences, as I'm sure you all know, and I came across a few quotes. I wanted to kick this off a little more lighthearted, a few quotes that really resonated in terms of how I think marketing views the importance of a customer versus sometimes how I think sales can sometimes lose sight of the importance of a customer. And I'll reference sales and marketing kind of as pitting them against each other at times in this presentation. This is by no means, it's not meant to come across as a knock on sales. It's just, this is based on a lot of the learnings and, again, some of those pitfalls that I kept doing things and wondering, why is my messaging not resonating? And then I learned sales and marketing are just really different. And they have different goals, different lives. And so this quote in particular, every company's greatest assets are its customers, because without customers, there's no company. This seems very obvious, like duh. But I think sometimes, marketing people focus on, especially customer marketing, we want to wrap our arms around the customer. We want to elevate their success and reward them and keep them happy and satisfied. Sales has different objectives, and so they can sometimes lose sight of this. This next quote resonated: a satisfied customer is the best business strategy of all. Similarly, in the same vein, I think marketing and customer marketing, we're here to shine a spotlight on them and create recognition programs and make sure that they're able to participate in the ways that they want to participate. And then, of course, there's the surprise and delight aspect. And sales they don't even see all of that goes on kind of behind the curtain, nor do they, quite frankly, in some regards, nor do they care. Like, they have different objectives. And lastly, this was my favorite because this really speaks in terms of, I think, what customer marketing and advocacy is all about. Building a good customer experience does not happen by accident. It happens by design. Everything that we do in terms of building programs and making our customers shine and creating stories to showcase that transformation or that success is all by design. So this just really was to kick it off by saying there's a huge difference that we need to recognize about in terms, not only just in terms of the tactical like goals and objectives of sales versus marketing, but this was really helpful in terms of level setting me as I was learning how to approach them, as to putting myself in sales shoes before a presentation and always approaching them with empathy and understanding that they are driving towards a number. They are numbers driven, whereas marketing, some parts of marketing are numbers driven, but we can sometimes be seen as, I think sales will lose sight of the importance of some of that like silly marketing stuff where they're like, I would hop on a call and they would say, and I know they were thinking this in terms of like, how are you going to help me hit my number? I don't really need to hear about this fluffy marketing stuff. Like, how are you going to help me hit my number? So that's kind of the basis for what we're talking about today. Really quickly, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but this is just the org chart so you understood where customer marketing sat at Airtable. So we were under the head of comms, who was directly under the CMO, and this was the layout of our team. So it was really great because our team was very cross-collaborative in terms of, for instance, any story that we would produce. Really, it would touch basically almost everyone across our team, maybe minus internal comms. Sometimes we would promote those internally. But as you can see, like worked really closely with our writer, analyst relations, serving up great customers or stories to speak to analysts, the press side, social, etc. And as you all know, customer marketing is extremely cross-functional. So just to level set, the main teams that customer marketing really leveraged as stakeholders were sales, success, and marketing. So sales, when I started, as I mentioned, I was the first customer marketing hire along with my colleague. So we were a team of 2. And sales and success, they held the relationships. They were on the front lines. So I knew that immediately I needed to align with them to understand how can I help them land more net new deals and expand existing accounts, because those were our goals. How can I work strategically with them to help identify the top enterprise customers who would co-market with us? And how do I enable them to leverage all the great assets and advocacy efforts and programs that we're doing on the marketing side to really help them strengthen relationships and sell more? On the marketing side, the main teams that I worked with were campaigns and demand generation. I'd say that was the top team that we cross-functionally worked together on ensuring that the voice of the customer is represented in everything that we do. So we had a goal actually, as I was leaving and didn't know it, to include customers in 90% of any content that we produced. And that actually wasn't, that might sound like a crazy lofty goal. It actually wasn't that crazy because we had a great content repository where they could self-serve, and we had it was very robust that we built out over the last 2 years. So it wasn't all on just our team of 2 to be sourcing all of that. Some of it was net new, but most of it was self-serve. And then we worked across the content team kind of jointly on stories. And as I mentioned, social, analyst relations, all of that. All right, so now, excuse me, I'm getting over a little cold. Now let's dive into why we're here. So why is a strong sales partnership even key? At Airtable, being the first customer marketing hire, I did not have any customer relationships yet, as I mentioned, and sales success, really, they were on the front lines. They held those relationships. So I knew I had to build strong relationships with them so that I was a trusted source, a trusted partner, and so that they could help inform me and really connect me based on their relationship with customers that we should be co-marketing with. So they really were our primary source of co-marketing opportunities. If you're doing it right, and my hope is that most of your companies are doing this, sales should really be including the co-marketing language in the contract. It doesn't even have to be in a net new deal. Customer marketing is a little more, can be better suited for the most part for renewal contracts. And Airtable did not again, a lot of the motions were fairly new. That was not the case. And so that was a challenge to get some of these big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 brands to, after the fact, then want to go and either sign something or just even have the conversation about using their logo or using their name or sharing their story. So doing that in the contract is something that I would highly recommend, and hopefully everyone is thinking, oh, good, I'm glad we already do that. Number two, a strong partnership with sales leads to much higher adoption of the content or even the programs that you produce. So the more visibility you and the team have across sales, the easier I found it to just even get their attention and buy-in on not only sourcing more stories for you, but leveraging those stories and those proof points and leveraging advocates in their deals. And this leads me to the reason that is important is it leads me to the next point of, in order for your work to be valuable or for you to be showing the impact of your work, sales is a huge part of that in terms of, are they leveraging what you're doing? Why are you creating this content? For us at Airtable, we had our marketing goals and then our sales goals. So we were really, really sourcing and supporting both organizations. And so you're creating content libraries or producing great customer testimonials, rallying advocates to be references, and you need sales to be able to report back on how those assets and customers are being used to drive more revenue. That gives meaning and impact to your work, helps you with career progression, et cetera. So you don't want to be producing great content or building programs that just kind of sit there or go into a black hole. You really want to be able to report back on how they're actually influencing deals. I'll kind of pause there. I've talked a lot. Any questions or any thoughts? You guys still with me? I should have put more GIFs in here. That usually energizes me during a long
Liz, I've got two thoughts, well, question and sort of an observation. So you talked about the voice of the customer. At my previous company, with my background in my generation in field marketing, and I worked ironically with the customer success teams there. My view is actually it's not a single voice, it's the voices of the customer, because what I found was everybody keeps talking about get to the C-suite and, we've got to get up the tree. And it's like half the time, they don't give a crap, really, not initially anyway. You need to talk to your data analyst and the engineers and all the rest of it. Their needs and their voices are very different to that of the C-suite. And so when I would do case studies and references, I would actually say to the CSMs and to the customer marketing team, look, we need multiple versions of the same one. You combine it into one, but you need one for the C-suite and you need one for, kind of the doers, should we say. And I'm just curious as to whether that's something that you came up against during your time.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to make sure that I'm understanding. So you're saying in the customer proof or stories, having multiple levels of voices. So like C-suite down to the manager.
Yeah.
Yes, that is, I didn't go into depth for this presentation, but 100%, that is something that we were very attuned to at Airtable, because we would give sales a specific criteria and we would try so hard to keep it as concise as possible on here's what we're looking for, like here's our target market for co-marketing. And in our stories, we always wanted ideally, and for Airtable and the usage, we wanted that user, a more tactical user, which was usually a manager or senior manager. And then we needed that director plus level to come in to talk about strategy. So stories that was really a requirement almost. We would be flexible, but in order to have both points of view was extremely important, because we wanted to be able to talk a little bit about the how was the base set up? How were they accomplishing this? But then we needed that director plus, that VP. We sometimes got C-level, but usually they were not really willing to participate in the story. That required a little bit of a different program, but having that higher voice, they needed to come in and talk about, why does this matter? So stories are great, but like, why does this matter to the business? That was the whole objective of our transformation stories, was why does what they're doing with Airtable, how is it impacting their ability to save money, to mitigate risk, et cetera. So having that higher title, absolutely, having that span was really, really important. That's a great point.
Right. Yeah. The other observation briefly, you talk about sales and marketing alignments, and again, it's the bane of my life and has been. One of my observations was that you would go through the effort of getting a reference, sort of written up and approved, and then the sales would kind of use it briefly, and then they're sort of not bin it, but then they'd be like, yeah, that's old now. I need something new. It's like one of my ongoing challenges was to say to them, this isn't old necessarily. Perhaps we can slice and dice it, but it's taken a lot of time and effort to get it. You need to be using it beyond just that initial first few weeks when it kind of gets into Salesforce. And again, be curious and interested in your thoughts whether you came across that and more importantly how you dealt with that.
Absolutely. So I actually speak about this a little bit later in the presentation. This is one of my points around, but I can jump to it now. So the how to use it for sales, like that enablement piece, is something that often I think is left off the table. So customer marketers, and I did this for a long time, I just focus on creating this great content and building out these extensive, robust content repositories with stories and proof points and quote bank. And then, like you said, they would use something and then be like, what's next? And we're like, no, this just took 5 months to build this beautiful story for you. Well, that's not, at first I was frustrated, probably similar to you, on this just took a ton of time and resources and you're just kind of on to like, where's the next one? So there's kind of two answers. If they're looking for, you can kind of feed their hunger with more bite-sized, easier to attain type things like quotes. So if they're just looking for like, you need something new every single day, go to the quote bank. We have over 250 quotes where you can use a different quote from a different industry every day in your communications to customers. If you're looking for something a little more robust, the stories are here, and the how to enable them on that of like, I think a lot of the time salespeople don't know how to use the assets that we provide them, and that's not totally on them. That's a sales enablement piece of, here's our recommendation. And if you as the customer marketer maybe aren't familiar, because you're not necessarily sales enablement, you should be able to come to the table with, I think, some advice on, here's where I recommend you inserting it into your deal. Work with sales enablement to come up with something, literally a program to put into their sales enablement programs of like, this is how stage 3, you should be inserting a customer story in your communication. Here is an example of an email communication, like from Salesforce, that inserts a customer story at the right time so it's not awkward. And the more they understand how to leverage it, then I think you'll see that repeat, them leveraging the same stories. Sure. Because it's really, they should be focusing on, they're trying to resonate with a certain customer. So if their customers if they have a communications customer, well, that communication story should be able to be used across all of their communications customers. It shouldn't just be one.
Absolutely. I agree. I think one of the areas and issues I kind of come up against as well is, particularly when you're dealing with enterprise sales reps, it's like actually you're kind of nannying them. It's like, guys, the amount that you're getting paid, you shouldn't have to be told. I should have to walk you through where to use a reference and how to use a reference and all that.
I know.
But I take your point, because otherwise it just kind of gets binned. And but yeah, so okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. You kind of had me jump ahead, so I'll touch a little more.
I'll try.
No, that's okay. You knew what I was going to say. That's awesome. I'll touch a little bit on that later, but we've already kind of dove into it. All right. So, excuse me. So in terms of how you start to build that strong partnership, the first thing that I would recommend you do, this is something I did not initially fully understand at Airtable, and I learned a lot and kind of wasted some time by not diving into this first, because I think I made a lot of mistakes up front because I didn't fully understand the culture of the marketing sales dynamic, their maturity. So here are 5 things that I would recommend. And this is even for people, like I'm talking from a perspective of, yes, I was the new kid on the block, new customer marketing team at a company that had never had it. I think this is even relevant to do maybe on an like annual, quarter, however often you want to do it, because cultures change, companies shift, especially in this climate. They're all over the place. So doing this once in a while and kind of reassessing what's the dynamic here can really help you plan better and adjust your programs and the way you communicate with sales if you understand the culture. So really briefly, evaluating your sales team's maturity, understanding, are they a seasoned enterprise sales team? Is this a really young, inexperienced sales team? Have they worked with customer marketing before? Do they know the value of customer marketing, or do they just think we're another one of those marketing teams that likes to hear themselves talk? Really understanding this can help you position how you speak to them and present to them and have more success. Identifying key stakeholders. You need certain people to help get in front of their teams if there's a barrier there, and who can help push your initiatives forward. So you need that support. And then absolutely do not forget about those on the ground in the field. So there's the stakeholders, and then there's the people who are on the front lines selling, who are going to be your spokespeople. They're going to be trusted peers to share with other salespeople, like, oh, I talked to Liz, she helped me so much with this deal. That's going to go a long way. So really make sure to build those relationships on the ground as well. And then what is that sales and marketing dynamic? This kind of goes a little bit to the enablement piece we just talked about. Are you noticing that it seems to be more of like referred to as one team? Do sales and marketing do a lot of things together? Do they have a kickoff for sales and marketing? At Marketo, we did. We were like one team. It was not as difficult for me to get in front of them, to push my initiatives forward. They got it. At Airtable, very different stage company, very different stage customer marketing team. Customer marketing was not on the map. So I had to eventually be pretty aggressive on inserting myself, because that dynamic was pretty divided. And so I had to really work culturally to understand that, and then adjust my plans to understand, how can I make sure that I can get in front of them on a regular cadence? How can I build that relationship and that trust? And lastly, understand their goals. If you don't know what they're driving towards, and hopefully there's some alignment between sales and marketing and the goals you're driving towards, but really understand, what are they up against? Come to meetings and lead with empathy. Their jobs are, you may disagree, I always would talk to sales and be like, I don't know how you do what you do. There's a reason I'm not in sales. I just wouldn't cut it. It's not my forte. I love marketing. It's less stressful. And I always would lead with empathy to say, listen, I know you're up against XYZ. Here's how I can be a partner to help you accomplish that. And so now, after you understand the culture, how do you literally build that relationship with sales? So this is actually a little more focused on the tactical, like what I would cover in a presentation. Very simple, very concise, 4 points. And again, concise. I can be, as you're probably gathering, very verbose. I had to work really hard, like really consolidate my points, be very clear, and try to be in and out in 10 minutes and be very clear on these points of what is customer marketing. Even if you have been in a company for 5 years or longer, there are new salespeople that come on all the time if you're hiring. And I don't think it's a bad idea to refresh and really have like a cadence where you can get in front of the sales team to create visibility and make sure that you zone in on these points just to remind them. It's very easy to forget. So making sure that everyone in sales is familiar with who you are, what you can bring to the sales organization, how you can help them. The second one is, how does customer marketing support sales? So this is who we are. How are we here to help you accomplish your goals? Why do they care? This is something I would kind of gloss over a lot, and I wasn't having a lot of success. I'd be talking in marketing speak. This is great opportunity for your customers. They don't care. And I don't mean that to be, again, I don't mean that to be harsh. They have other things that they're focused on, where they have people breathing down their neck on needing to hit numbers. And so that stuff isn't as important. So how are we here to help you? Then after you've set the stage, now you have an opportunity to ask. So to say, now what does customer marketing need from sales, if anything, to help you be more successful? So in my case, I needed them to surface and nominate their best enterprise customers who would co-market with us. I didn't hold all those relationships. So I really needed them to nominate, who do you think are the best brands that have more holistic stories that would be able to share them with us? And then This is what we were just talking about. Thank you so much for your comments and questions of the how can we work best together. This is what is always left off, or I would always at least leave it out thinking sales enablement isn't really my job. Well, at certain companies, depending on the stage, it may not be. In my case, it absolutely was my job. If I wanted them to actually do what I was asking, I needed to prescribe, this is how we can work best together. So I would simply say, I need you to nominate customers. Here is the form. It has 3 short questions. It will take you no more than 5 minutes. Nominate 2 customers by Friday. Clear deadline, clear actionable objectives. I got much more response than when I would just leave it open-ended, like, please nominate your customers. I'll send you something. And they would just gloss over and never do it. So be really clear and concise on prescribing exactly the steps that they need to go through. All right, I've been talking way too much, and please chime in with questions or comments. I love to hear other people's voices. This leads me to sharing some of the mistakes that I made, and you'll see a little bit of a connection to some of the things that I've prescribed to do. But I did want to call these out just because, again, Airtable was such a wonderful experience because I learned so much about how to communicate and work with sales. And I will take that with me the rest of my career because it was really valuable. So I mentioned this a little bit previously, speaking and marketing speak. I was the queen of that. I would just show up to sales meetings and talk like I would to my marketing colleagues about the value of stories, the feel good, it helps customers build their brands. This is helping our company. Oh my gosh, right over their heads. Like, how are you going to help me hit my number? That's what they wanted to hear. I was missing the mark. So I finally learned, okay, I need to shift my story and show them hard proof on how a story led to expansion or closing a deal. Or if you haven't done it yet, speak hypothetically. This is how it will lead. Like, again, showing them the how and the proof is going to go a long way. One of the best things I did was I invited a salesperson to join me. I was just not having a lot of success resonating with sales. I invited one of their peers to come on who I'd worked on a story with. And she did an amazing job of sharing, hey, I nominated my customer, like start to finish. I nominated my customer for a story. I worked with Liz and team. The customer was so happy, got to share their story. It was promoted all over. It led to expansion within the account and more opportunities. And this is how. She even showed going to number 4, again, talking about that how piece. She even showed templates of the emails that she inserted the stories into that helped her build opportunities with other customers. So the story that she helped with, she then shared it with her other customers and it drove more pipeline for her. That resonated way better than even if I shared the exact same presentation. She's a credible source. She's on the front lines with everyone else. So just switching that, I saw a lot of success. Is there a question or a comment?
Yes, hi Liz. Kim in chat asked, what questions are in your customer form? I constantly have a hard time getting the sales team to nominate. And I think that's a great question because you were talking about it yesterday too.
Yes. So it really, really depends on what your goals or initiatives are. So I can give you an example of what was in my form, but and maybe you can iterate. But at first, our form was like, we wanted as much information as possible because it would help us not have to go back to the rep to really get the rest of the story. And then we found out it was a huge barrier to entry and they just weren't filling it out because it was going to take them 10, 15 minutes instead of 5. So I tried to get it down to like 3 or 4 questions. And it was the standard, like, who is the account? For us in Airtable, the story that we were trying to tell was, do they have any quantifiable results? So that was really important. I kind of picked what is the most important thing from the story. And it was the transformational business impact is what we were trying to tell. So that was one of the most important questions was, do they have quantifiable impact? Can they speak to actual numbers or cost savings or, mitigating risk and how that shaped the business? And then the other one, this seems like ages ago that I did this, and it's only been a month. The other one was just simply what solution they fell into. So it was kind of, it helped us categorize because we were focused on product and marketing. And so that we have for Airtable, it was a little unique. We had thousands of use cases. We finally, in the 2 years, were able to kind of narrow that down into a cohesive list. So having the AE categorize where they fell into the use case for us was very helpful because we could immediately kind of like categorize them in a bucket. Before we had that narrowed down, we would still ask them that, but it would just literally be like all over the map. And we had a really hard time placing them on like, okay, what will this story support? So those were the main things. I know that with Airtable, it was really specific to Airtable. So I'm happy to, if you want to connect offline, I'm happy to weigh in on maybe like specifically your use case, but I hope that was kind of helpful. Anything else?
Not yet.
All right, so I'll finish up with this real quick. Number 3 was not telling enough stories. This is something.
Hold on.
Oh,
As soon as I said not yet, 2 questions popped up.
No worries. And Mary, tell me, how am I doing on time? I don't have a ton more slides, but don't want to go over.
It's 2:40. You're doing fine. Megan asked, did you do a spiff with nomination?
I'm getting there. So hold that thought. And I think that might even be the next slide or the slide after. But I'll get there. And then if I don't answer your question, let me know.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I'll finish up with this real quick. So tell stories where you can. Shame on me. I'm a storyteller. And it comes much more easily to me to extract narratives and stories from customers than I would do presentations and I would have no stories. And I was like, oh, I need to get better at that. But just think about your audience, think about what's important to them, and even add some lighthearted. I think we take everything, I would take things really seriously. And when you have humor and stories in your presentations, just in general, it just makes it more fun. So I encourage you to do that, but relate it to their goals. And I think you'll grab them a little more. I've already talked about the how to leverage, like really important to show them exactly how to do it, where to do it. And then be concise with a clear CTA and a specific deadline. So don't leave it open-ended. So we have talked already a lot about enablement. So some of this might be a little repeat, but now that you've understood the culture, you've gotten in front of them and shared why you're here, how you can help them, how they can help you. When it comes down to it, I need sales to leverage the customers and advocates and customer content that I've produced to sell. I need them to leverage that to show the impact of the value and the value of the work that I'm doing. It's not the only way that I'm showing impact, because you could be supporting marketing, sales, and other things, but if sales is not using what you're doing, then you're not hitting your goals, most likely. So here are 3 things that I would recommend to do to make this easier for sales. It's all about making it easy for them. Leverage the systems that they are already using. Do not recreate the wheel. An example was at Airtable, they were actually, sales enablement was kind of just rolling out some new things. Like we were very immature in terms of sales enablement. And they were rolling out a new sales hub. It was not a system that marketing used at all. And honestly, we weren't really invited to. And I had to insert myself and say, great, on the pages I worked with sales enablement, it was like on the pages that it makes sense, I want a big button that says like customer proof or whatever it needed to say, so that they could be linked to our repository and easily self-serve and use that content. Insert yourself to their systems. Don't ask them to go here, here, and here, because they'll never use it. Make the processes streamlined, operationalize them, make it super easy. Again, kind of a repeat of the first one, but making sure that the actual repository or CMS, whatever, that you're leading them to is that user-friendly. When they click on that button and go to we called it the DAM, the digital asset management, when they go there, can they find anything, or is it just a hot mess? If they cannot easily search by what they need to search by, and this is where leverage your sales team and ask them, like, how do you find things? If they can't find things easily, they're gone. They're not coming back. Like, it has to be easy and quick. So make sure you can adjust. And then lastly, this is what answers hopefully the question that just came through from Megan. Tap into their competitive nature. Salespeople are motivated by recognition and money. They are numbers driven. Mary and I were just talking yesterday, if you're familiar with the 4 types of advocates, sales are the status seekers. Like they want recognition, they want reward. So I did create a spiff actually about a year, maybe a little less than a year in to when I was at Airtable. And it gave salespeople bonuses based on not just nominating, they had to nominate a quality story that actually was completed. So they had to see it through, and it didn't require a ton of time on their end. It was just kind of like, help us foster the relationship and we'll take it. And we did see an increase in nominations. And then the people who got the payouts make a big splash. So make sure that it's not just the monetary aspect, which is a huge driver because everyone wants to make more money. And this was just for like filling out a form and having a couple calls on their end. So not a big lift, but also if you can make a big splash, say like the winner's going to be like announced or have something at an all hands meeting, give them that recognition and spotlight that helps their career. It makes them feel special. It really taps into what's important to them, I have found, and it did drive more nominations. So happy to answer any other questions on that. But I saw when you have the budget, absolutely do that. And lastly, I think this is my last slide. As the last 2 years kind of came to a close, even though I didn't know it, of working to align sales and marketing, I call this the 2-year experiment because that's looking back. I was like, that's kind of what it was, is there was a lot of trial and error. And this presentation was fun to do because it enabled me to really think back on what worked. What are those mistakes that I made that did not work that, gosh, if I could go back, I wasted a lot of time, but I learned a lot from it. And I was able to see some progress. So I saw an increase in executive buy-in, which also really helped me personally. I was able to personally get visibility across our executive team because of a lot of these initiatives to try and align sales and marketing. They knew it was a gap. And so I did my best to, with where I was sitting in the organization, I did a kind of a soul searching exercise on what can I influence? And then I was also realistic on what were some things that I couldn't necessarily influence, or I could influence, I couldn't change. And so I kind of worked within that, because you can get pretty discouraged if you're making all these efforts to do things. And culturally, culture plays into your success. If there's something that needs to be addressed at the higher level, you certainly can speak up and influence that, but there were things that were out of my hands in terms of I can't make that decision. I can't just all of a sudden poof, change the culture. So I was trying to stay within my swim lanes and make essentially small wins, but that executive buy-in was starting to be there. So that was really exciting. I was able to see an increase in adoption of our assets. So we were able to track just through Airtable how many people were actually coming to our base, which was the DAM, which we held all of our content in, and even the website views as well. So we were able to see in those 2 years, especially kind of the last 6 months, a much greater adoption. So it was kind of seeing the fruits of our labor of great, salespeople are starting to really leverage this. And then lastly, I spoke a little bit to this around the executive buy-in, but just visibility in general. We saw an increase of visibility of our team, of like the customer marketing team across sales. They knew who we were. I think they were viewing us as really that trusted partner that we wanted to be. And they could see and they understood generally why we were valuable. And that's really, really helpful to you having success in your career, is if you can be a trusted partner across the organization. So sadly, as you know, my time there was cut short, but we were seeing a lot of progress in this. And it actually, all of this, like, why is all of this important? It might be obvious, but it really, again, it resulted in our work driving more pipeline and opportunities and having a greater influence in closing deals. And that's not even including the marketing aspect of, you know, the success we were having, but we were at least able to, I would say, go out with a bang, because I'm just going to tell myself that. But I'm very proud of the work that we did there. And I really hope that some of these tips and tricks, hopefully they resonated with you. Hopefully the mistakes you're thinking, oh, good, I haven't made any of those and I won't, because it did waste a lot of time, but I learned the hard way, but it was great. Thank you so much for having me. And if there are any more questions, I'm happy to take them. And please hit me up on the Slack community. I would love to connect with any of you just to talk shop and or talk opportunities. So thanks so much. Mary, is there anything else?
Let's see. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Actually, I can stop sharing so that we can see each other.
I just want to say, regardless of you being let go, obviously it was a riff and we're all so used to that now. It's obvious that you made quite an impact. And from our call yesterday, I really liked your focus on what you called culture, but for me is like understanding the sales culture, the sales team, and where they are today and how that will affect what you're working on, because we are impacted so much by other teams and we have to find a way through that. And one of the things I told Liz yesterday was that she's obviously a great detective into looking at what's going on within the company, within these teams, and then finding a way to work through all of that, which I think is one of the areas where we can often struggle a bit, is if when we come into a position and trying to find what's going on, what can I leverage, what can't I leverage, all of those things. So I think this is a very applicable call to what a lot of us are doing. Very helpful for sales alignment, for any type of alignment, because you're really trying to figure out how to build those partnerships. And I just thought it was a great call. Thank you so much, Liz.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the comments. And I saw one comment, maybe it was it AJ?
AJ said that he'd love to talk to you about branding. He might have
Let's connect,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I had an observation actually in the chat around, I think, I forget, I think I dropped it in there, but I did just one quick final question that is around the kind of references that you found sales more willing to get involved in. So my experience has been press releases, for example, relatively straightforward compared to, say, video testimonials or getting a customer to present at a Gartner event and beyond. From a customer marketing perspective, what do you find is the most impactful? Because when I'm looking at the funnel, obviously you're going to drop different customer content in different points. Some's easy, some isn't. But from your experience, what did you find most customers were willing to do from the get-go, and what activities like trying to pull teeth?
Yes, absolutely. You're really speaking to the last 2 years of my life in terms of experimenting with different tactics, having frustrations as to we need, again, it's all about like sales alignment. We had some frustrations through this process around, we were really focused on stories for a while, not closed off to necessarily just like capturing quotes and like lower lift things, but the stories were really what we were trying to build out. And without that sales alignment and support, we could do it, but it was just taking me like quadruple the amount of time. I was researching, I was sourcing, I was trying to find them, and just didn't have a lot of support on like, just introduce me to your great customer and I can take it from there. But I think it depends on what you decide from a customer marketing standpoint is important. So if you're looking at your landscape and you're seeing are there any gaps? Like, what does sales need? Do they need just sales decks with like a quick summary of the story, like snapshots of challenge, solution, result? Is that going to be the most beneficial to like move the needle in a sales deal? Or does sales want a longer written form story because that's really what they need and want to share and talk about with the customer? Do they not want anything?
But my honest observation, sales don't know what they want. And that was part of my frustration. It's like you can deliver stuff and it's like, depends who you talk to. The VP sales will have a view, and depending on how strong he or she is, can enforce that across the sales team. But there will be individual sales reps that'll be like, nah, I don't need that. That's rubbish. Oh, I need, it's like, guys, seriously, I've only got the pair of arms. It's going to do so much.
Well, then in that case, that puts you in a great position. If they don't know what they want, which I totally agree, I've seen that too. You tell them what they want. Like if you have an opinion, come to the table with, listen, I kind of split it into two categories of there's like longer term projects that have a longer term gain. So like those stories they could take a couple months to produce. But once we had that story, I know it was valuable to sales, whether they told me or not. I was like, this is valuable to you, and this is how you should be using it in your deals. But also, as I'm doing that story, we would maximize that content and extract tons of quotes. So even in the process of capturing that story, I could have 10 quotes and have the customer approve them and have a short win. Like that took me an interview. That took me an hour to interview someone, and I have 10 quotes from the transcript that I can say, hey, can we have these approved for our quote bank? Yes. I send that over to sales while I'm producing a story over here. So the key that I didn't talk about also is really maximizing your engagement with customers, no matter what you're doing. At like the foundation, I would always just have a 30-minute discovery call with customers to establish a relationship, but also just hear their story. And then I had the transcript and whether they did anything with us going forward. Obviously, you still need approval if you're going to use something externally. But even if they were like, oh, we can't do a full story because that's a little bit of we don't have time. It's too big of a lift. Okay, well, I loved hearing about your story. I created this snapshot, which is like that sales slide. And I have these 10 quotes that we would love to use in our marketing promotions. And they would approve that, or like for social. And that right there, that 30-minute call just created like 7 assets that I send over to sales. So thinking about how to maximize those engagements is really crucial. Don't look at it from a single lens of, oh, they didn't do a story, we can't do anything with them. Sometimes they just don't have time and they just like, oh, I can't commit, like a couple review cycles. So, okay, I'll make it easy for you. I'll package this up and I'll run with what I have. So it really, I'd say, take the initiative and prescribe to sales what they need. And then if it doesn't work or resonate, then it's like, okay, the stories aren't working. Let's try to do smaller things, like let's just leverage quotes, or let's just leverage putting things out on social that they can just easily reshare. Just experiment with different things.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Great. But thank you. This has been really interesting.
But yes, I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. We'll connect on the back of this.
Thank you.
AJ, are you in the community?
I am.
Okay.
I'll drop you a note there in Slack.
That and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. Thank you, Leslie, for making this connection so that Liz could hop on and share with all of us. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And next week, I'm going to go through some of my community for advocacy tips and kind of share a little bit about my cohort course coming up. And it looks like Leslie wants to say hi, so go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying hi. Yes, hi. Sorry, I was a little late. I was filming a course thing too, so it's really fun.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen everybody and I haven't said hi to everybody in a long time, so hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me, Leslie.
Of course. Thank you for dropping this wonderful knowledge. Some of the stuff that you were saying, I had in my course, and I was like, phew. I'm right. That's good.
Yeah. Yes, because I'm the end all be all.
You are.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
No, it was a great call. I really liked it. And I have a few people that I've already promised to reach out and share it with in the community. And yeah, I love it. So thank you all so much for showing up, and everybody go ahead and get to your weekend and have a great weekend. And whoever's going to Customer XCon, have a great time and share everything with me next week. And see you next Friday.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.